Resumes office as National Security Advisor, vows to stabilize Nigeria. President Tinubu renames airports after Buhari, Usman Danfodio, all the notable Nigerians, promises total reform of the aviation sector. Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke denies alleged plans to pardon convicted murderer Ramon Adedoyin, insists justice must prevail. And outside of Nigeria, Sierra Leone awaits election results as vote counting enters day 3. Wagner fighters to stay in Mali and Central African Republic, says Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Joining me tonight on Politics HQ, I have Chukwuma Okenwa, the Executive Director of Lead Network Africa. I also have Kolawole Oluwadare, Deputy Director of the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERA. I am Gbenga Aborowa. Stay with us, Politics HQ. We'll be right back. About a month ago, Bola Ahmed Tinubu was sworn in as Nigeria's president, and the scorecards for his first month in office are in. President Tinubu, arguably the least popular president in Nigeria's democratic history, came on the back of strong, although divisive, political antecedents. His first month in office have seen bold calls made in the form of new policies, some of which Nigerians have hailed and condemned in sections. From key kitchen cabinet announcements to the removal of petroleum subsidy, students' loan and new monetary policy decisions, many Nigerians are yet to fully decide on the direction they see from the president in his first 30 days in office. With the ministerial list still waiting to be announced, the jury is out on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. On Politics HQ today, we will assess President Tinubu's first 29 days in office, his decisions and how they impact Nigeria and Nigerians. Now, joining me for this discussion is Chukwuma Okenwa, Executive Director at Lead Network Africa. A warm welcome to you, Chukwuma, and thanks for joining me on Politics HQ.
Thank you so much.
Now, Chukwuma, what's your assessment of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's first month in office? Based on the decisions he's made so far, what are the key strengths and weaknesses demonstrated in his decision-making process?
I would want to summarize his policies and interventions for this first month with just a line: good policies, but wrong timing and wrong approach. Yes, we can agree that some of the interventions we've seen from the current administration are ones that are long overdue and are applauded by economists, hypothetically as having the capacity of strengthening Nigeria's economy. Howbeit, I think considering the fact that it appears in most of these policies, Mr. President actually placed the cart before the horse, really makes us to interrogate these policies to wonder what is the immediate impact on Nigerians and how, like some other plans that Mr. President have, can actually mitigate some of these reactions. I take, for instance, the issue of the removal of fuel subsidy, which right from the presidential speech, which, allegedly was not part of the speech, and just that singular announcement saw the nation thrown into, high inflationary rates all across the country just within the 24 hours of this particular administration. I think that announcement was ill-timed.
Now, Chukwuma, talking about the removal of fuel subsidy, you did talk about putting the cart before the horse. It's been a month since the removal of this fuel subsidy, and we're yet to see palliative measures being rolled out. Nigerians are groaning on the high inflationary pressure. What do you make of the removal of fuel subsidy? Can you elaborate on the potential short-term and long-term effects of this decision on the Nigerian economy and its citizens. And I believe you said, good policy, bad timing. What could have been the best time to remove the fuel subsidy, in your own opinion?
First and foremost, we've always, as a nation, had the option of removing the fuel subsidy through the option of strengthening our refineries and ensuring that it's functioning optimally. It's an option because Nigeria is the only OPEC nation that still depend on imported petrol in up to 95%. That does not make any economic sense. So I would have expected, like previous administration, to have explored that part. Howbeit, the first place Mr. President would have been to cut down on the cost of governance. Because the fact that, we have like up to 30% of the budget being marked for removal of fuel subsidy does not mean we should not interrogate the other 70 to actually ask ourselves, are we actually using these funds that we are borrowing judiciously? Because in a situation like, in a nation like Nigeria, where the average citizen is suffering, have representatives of the people who are earning so high. There's no way you can explain that. And allegedly also, there is attempts to review that by up to 114% within the first month of Mr. President's administration. I don't think that is what we want at this particular point. We should also be able to, we want Mr. President to be able to ensure that the anti-graft agencies are working well. I mean, a lot of times we've had billions hanging here and there under the sway of the ministries, departments, and agencies. These monies could make a whole lot of difference in our economy. We want to see some of those monies, first of all, judiciously used. And then when you now come in terms of removing that subsidy, because the subsidy, there is no palliative that is as strong as having something that Nigerians not only depend for movement, but also for business. Because we know how epileptic the power supply can be. So if you run business, you need to power yourself most of the time. So if Mr. President is actually talking about palliative, the first would have been just reduce the cost. Maybe instead of taking away 380 something at once, you could take away 200. That's the palliative that will get across. A situation where you even come for civil servants that constitute just 2% of the population, you increase their salary. How about the other common Nigerians? Are they not also Nigerians?
So, Chukwuma, following up,
all of those processes?
Following up on this issue of subsidy, as President Tinubu's administration tackles critical economic issues, such as the removal of the fuel subsidy, what measures would you suggest? I know you talked on a few. What measures would you suggest should be put in place to mitigate the potential impact on vulnerable sections of the population, which seem to be in the majority, and ensure equitable outcomes? You talked about reduced cost of governance. What other policies or measures can be taken to mitigate the harmful effect of this subsidy removal on the common Nigerian?
Certainly, first and foremost, would be to ensure stable power supply so that businesses that largely depend on petrol will not get out of business within the shortest space possible. That would be the first subsidy. I mean, a first palliative would have, of course, expect of Mr. President. Businesses also should be able to access funds as single digits in a time like this. And then also in the case of the conditional cash transfers, we should now begin to look at something that is more sustainable, more specific in terms of, making intervention in areas of importance of people's life, like we've seen in the United Kingdom, where they come up with different forms of palliatives targeted to solve certain needs. Okay, those of you that don't have food, those that maybe you can't even pay electricity bill. And then also, I think the most that we affect all, rather than increasing the VAT, which affects virtually every product and has impact also in inflation, it should be reviewed downwards from 7.5% to 2.5%. If Mr. President can ensure that through the CBN, the economy is well managed to the point that we are less impacted by inflation, then there won't be any palliative that is stronger than that. But a situation where the interventions is only targeted at civil servants or even the political class, like the alleged proposal to increase the salary, the take home, or even a situation where you just have like conditional transfers without any form of transparency. You know, you just hear that like so number of billions have been transferred to whoever and to whenever and to however without accountability. It's not what Nigerians need at this particular point, because over time, you know, you could recall during the time of, the COVID-19, and some palliative interventions were to be made. I could recall like one particular House of Rep member who came in two big streets in Lagos, and all he could give them was 4 loaves of bread, right? I mean, a renowned House of Rep member,
yes,
you know, who's even gone higher politically. So when you look at what sometimes our politicians call palliatives, you actually know that at the end of the day, it will be a pat in the back on poverty and the austerity that the nation is currently going through.
Now, Chukwuma, you mentioned the Central Bank of Nigeria, the apex bank, in shaping policy and coming up with interventions that would grow the economy. Now, the suspension of Godwin Emefiele, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, indicates a strong stance against poor management of the monetary system. In your own opinion, what specific improvements or changes should the new administration prioritize in terms of the country's monetary policies?
First and foremost, in terms of access to funds, we know that largely the Nigerian economy is over 90% informal, powered by SMEs. And of course, like for governments, government, state governors, the subnationals, very, very critical stakeholders, access funds through 2 major ways: the federal allocations and of course the internally generated revenues. How is this revenues generated internally? It is from businesses that operate within those states. So the fastest way that any government can grow any economy, even as much as we forestall like situation where like alternative energy could pose a threat to like burning of fossils, right? We foresee a situation where maybe international regulations could make alternative or green energy more lucrative than what we currently have. So instead of just depending everybody on the federal allocation, which largely comes from, you know, sale of crude oil, how about now exploring, just like even in other nations, where largely the major source of their income, aside from the fact that, you know, they export and all the rest of it, you also talk about an effective taxation system that is efficient. But of course, the tax, the much you're able to get from the people, is a function of the much the people are able to make.
How productive
if you don't incentivize the informal sectors to have a situation where businesses can thrive, the ease of doing business index is healthy enough for businesses to make progress in Nigeria, rather than maybe like the instance of multiple taxation, double digits. I tell you, research reveals that it's difficult for you to see like a nation where to like assess loans is at double digits. It's difficult to see that nation grow at double digits economically. So no wonder in the case of Nigeria, you have like a whooping up to 27% to assess loans from commercial banks. But of course, the growth rate has always ranged, you know, from 1.5%, 2.5. I mean, that is ridiculously too low for a nation. And when sometimes like some predictions are made, it's like even when we grow at 3%, everybody is celebrating. I mean, we've not really like, you know, told that part of industrial revolution. When you see like some other once developing nations who transform the economy to become stable, right? And become big player in the 3 major economic indices. In the case of China, for instance, you know, who is leading the world in the purchasing power parity, right? You know, you talk about full industrialization, a situation where China was growing at 18%. I mean, can that be said of Nigeria? Certainly not.
I mean, we could get there if certain policies are put in place and we have the right people at the helm of affairs. Now, Chukwuma, corruption has been a long-standing issue in Nigeria, and the suspension of Abdurrashid Bawa, the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, highlights President Tinubu's commitment to addressing it. Now, how effective do you believe his approach will be in combating corruption? And looking at the office of the EFCC chairman, it seems like there's a poison chalice there. Since the pioneer chairman, Nuhu Ribadu, every other chairman has been embroiled in one sort of corruption allegation or the other. What further steps should be taken to ensure transparency and accountability, not just in the EFCC, but generally across board?
In all honesty, like, for some of these agencies, where you have like a chairman as almost like operating like the all in all of that particular sector, I think one of the reasonable ways to correction in those areas is to set up a board. Rather than the person operating like as an emperor, it should be a board even where civil society advocates and players could actually have a role, have a permanent seat there, right? Get people also like maybe from the women community, young persons. Let it be like a robust approach in terms of tackling corruption. We've seen like many institutions of government left at the mercy of one man. And certainly when you have a situation where one man takes all of the decisions, that is what leads to corruption. For instance now, you know what, why like things are not really working out like as expected in terms of government in Nigeria. Certainly the executives want a situation where the legislative can actually become a rubber stamp, not playing their role of ensuring that the executive power is checked, right? The oversight function of ensuring also that all the organs of the executive perform their constitutional roles to the advancement of the people. And once that is shut out, then of course you can't have governance, because what you have is a situation where someone assumes the position of an emperor, takes decisions like the state belongs to him or her. And such kind of development stride is not sustainable and certainly not what we need now as a nation.
Now, Chukwuma, the signing of the Electricity Act 2023 and the unification of the foreign exchange market are notable achievements within the first month of President Tinubu's administration. Can you discuss the impact of the potential impact of these actions on the country's energy sector and economic stability?
In all honesty, like, part of what I said initially, this is good policy, unarguably. I mean, I get bothered when I travel to like nations with stable economy and discover that the difference, right, between the exchange platforms where you can access these currencies and that of the official rate, it's very minimal, sometimes in 0.0%, right? So, and I keep wondering why that variance, between like, black market actually is supposed to be illegal, right? The parallel market. Exactly. So that has, of course, all this why become like the official way where people can even access dollars because there are a lot of bottlenecks. Now, Mr. President solved one problem by ensuring, okay, there is that flow, free flow of the naira to be able to like, sell at its best based on the prevailing rates at the I&E market, the importer-exporter windows. But then one aspect that has not been addressed is actually the availability of these dollars. Nigeria need to earn a lot. Is it not embarrassing to discover, as was disclosed by NNPC, that all the monies we've earned for the past 2-3 years was used in a subsidy scam of allegedly using all of them to subsidize the petrol that we use in the country. And none of those monies was paid into the federation account. So that's like a shocking disclosure. And how do you stabilize the economy that way? So when you have a situation where you are not still earning enough, you are not producing enough as a nation, and that's why I rather consider some of these things as like hurriedly rushing into policies that require adequate thinking, adequate planning. And once your administration is stable and you take some of these decisions in the next 1 year, haven't put enough foundation on the ground, then it's going to be commendable. But look at just by taking that decision. It was very similar to when President Muhammadu Buhari came up then, and in a bid to strengthen the naira, made an announcement on the clamp down of the BDCs, and we saw how that impacted on the naira. Up the dollar went just within a couple of hours, and has refused to go down since then. And then we have another good policy, but of course wrong timing, and the announcement was also made in the same similar manner, and is also producing the same similar effects.
Now, Chukwuma, since President Tinubu assumed office, the Aso Rock presidential villa has become a sort of mecca with wide consultations taking place, different people across all political strata, across political affiliation, visiting him for one reason or the other. President Tinubu has emphasized the importance of consultations and lobbying for positions in his administration. How do you evaluate his approach to these processes and governance and also wide consultations? And what potential implications might they have on the effectiveness and inclusiveness of his government?
Yeah, that's what is reasonably expected. And I think President Tinubu doesn't have that exclusive monopoly to like entertain visitors at this particular point. I mean, across different government houses, especially before like the cabinet is set up, the kitchen cabinet, the different boards set up, you know, political players certainly keeps engaged.
Hello, Chukwuma, are you there?
Engaging because of administration. So that is what is restricted, you know, from the political players. So they are at it again, you know, engaging widely to see how they can be part of this administration.
Now, Chukwuma, what Nigerians are expecting in the next few weeks or couple of days is the naming of his cabinet ministers. So when it comes to selecting cabinet ministers, President Tinubu faces a choice between political loyalty and merit-based appointments. In your opinion, what factors should he consider to strike the balance, the right balance, and ensure that the most qualified individuals are chosen?
Yeah, the formula, of course, will be pretty simple. Yeah, we are aware that in fact, today in today's Nigeria, you have a great deal of technocrats, you know, people with strong professional background and experience and integrity, who are also partisan, who play politics. So those ones, of course, in terms of political consideration, should be considered. They should come high ranking. And then beyond that, Mr. President should go beyond political lines, especially in sensitive aspects of the economy, him, working with him, people that can be able to look straight into his face and tell him what should move the nation forward. Because I think one of the conflicting things we still see as a nation is we have largely people who wants to be loyal to one person and not loyal to the Constitution of Nigeria. And with that consciousness, you know, being armed with that sense of responsibility that I'm here to provide the best advice to Mr. President. And I would rather resign as a professional rather than maybe watch him go the wrong way, and then while still being here and my impact is not felt. I mean, that's what makes developed nations, you know. So I think one of the culture also, like we are talking to Nigerians tonight, is appreciate the principle of resigning when your impact is not felt. I mean, what's the need of like trying to hang around power when you are just in seat but not in power? So I think that culture wants to begin to like get it right, where professionals can resign because the good thoughts they are bringing to fore are not being respected. Then, of course, the political players will actually understand that the power that you think you've got, it's not everything when you can even get the best of the nation to work for you.
Now, Chukwuma, President Tinubu has demonstrated a sense of urgency and determination to leave a positive legacy from the actions we've seen in his first month in office. How crucial do you think it is for him to maintain this momentum in implementing reforms and delivering on his promises, and what challenges might he encounter in the process?
Yeah, in all honesty, like let me say that yeah, on one part I commend Mr. President, but of course to have like a sustainable development that will be all impactful, because it's really interesting that when President Buhari was leaving, he alleged that he's done all he promised. In fact, he exceeded expectation. And the daughter alleged also that the dad was a silent achiever. And then the Nigerians were wondering if we can actually match those records with reality. Because economics is such that if you tell us we are making progress, then I want to see that in the price of bread. I want to see that in the maybe like the price of staple foods that are accessed every day. And when if it's going high, which of course inflation is also like a healthy part of the economy, then I should be able to earn more. The economy should be in such a way I can earn more to be able to afford those things. So to actually have a sustainable impact that will advance the life of every Nigerian, Mr. President should be able to look at the real indices, which is the lives of the average Nigerian, he should be able to relate with it, right? We are talking about empathy. Don't just say, oh, we are improving. Don't just say, oh, we are making your life better. And then the common man on the street is wondering, how better is my life? So we want to see like those indices of empathy. We want to see performance, right? In terms of like when we weigh you in terms of numbers, we should be able to say, okay, on security, this is what Mr. President has done. On economy, this is what he has done, right? In terms of infrastructure, in terms of growing the economy as against the debt profile of the nation. These are indices we want to look at. And then also in terms of like the foreign reserve of the nation, in terms of the forex, how strong the naira is against every other currency. You know, because I mean, most Nigerians want to do business beyond the shores of the country. And technically, when you are from a nation with a weak currency, then you are technically disadvantaged. And of course, it is the onerous tax of Mr. President to improve the strength of our naira.
Now, Chukwuma, as we begin to wrap up this conversation tonight, I'm happy you spoke to the point of accountability, not just saying, look, we'll do this, you make promises, and you fail to deliver. The government needs to show working and show that it has made an impact, meaningful impact on the lives of Nigerians. Now, Nigeria is a low-trust environment. There's a huge trust deficit between the governed and the government. Public trust in government institutions is very crucial for effective governance. How can President Tinubu's administration work to rebuild public trust, especially in the light of past governors' challenges, widespread skepticism among the Nigerian population?
Yeah, transparency, of course, very, very important, and it has to start with Mr. President. He should be able to carry Nigerians along on what is happening to advance the lives of Nigerians. The Nigerians want to be, you know, on that table technically by communicating, giving us, you know, a feedback on what is happening and what is expected. And when there are failures, maybe against what he expected, he should be able to provide an answer for that. Secondly would be, one of the things I think that create that huge trust deficit is a situation where some people visibly are above the law, right? We've seen like in time past, like a president flouting court orders. What example is the leader showing to others? How are they going to see you as someone that is lawful and has actually come to strengthen the rule of law? But when you have like a nation where the president says, well, you see what, the law is supreme, I'm also a lawful citizen, an abiding citizen, then of course there won't be any single Nigerian that will have any reason, you know, to really toe the path of unlawfulness. And the president should demonstrate that by ensuring that even those that are close to him, those within the same political party, yes, we've had a political pundit in time past claim that once you join the APC, you become a saint. That should not be. And so we have a situation where like some past governors now who served in different political parties and have like a lot of skeleton in their cupboard, I mean, hide their profile on their states, and in a bid to run away from accountability, already making moves. You know, they're also part of those, the pilgrimage to Aso Rock. I mean, it shouldn't be, right?
Yes, and there should be no sacred cows. Thank you very much, Chukwuma Okenwa, Executive Director, Lead Network Africa. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight on Politics HQ. Thanks for your time and your insight.
Thank you. Thank you.